It is time for another 1-minute market update where we talk about the two things that you should care about most as a homeowner. That's how much is my home worth today compared to what it was yesterday, and how long would it take to sell in today's market. We are in August now, meaning we are looking at the stats from July, and they are not so great. Any momentum that was built up in June, looked like things were starting to move a little bit, has completely died. Sales were up about 10% in June, and they are back down 10% in July. And we're still sitting about 18.5% below the 10-year seasonal average, so suffice it to say that sales are pretty slow. And that is being reflected in prices as well. The one maybe bright spot is that inventory has actually come down in most places. It seems like people are holding off to list their homes because they know that it's pretty tough to sell right now. The people who are really suffering right now, though, are the people that need to sell, especially the ones that have homes that need work. Fixer-uppers, project homes right now are getting crushed. So if you're looking for a good deal and you're somebody who's kind of handy, that's probably a good place to look. But anyway, let's jump into the stats. So we are looking at HPI price, starting off with detached homes in Burnaby. You are down 1.6% from last month and down 11.1% from this time last year. New West, you're down 2.5% from last month and down 13.3% from last year. Coquitlam, you are down 1.3% from last month and down 5.3% from last year. Port Moody, you're up 1%, but you're still down 4.7% from last year. Port Coquitlam, you are down 1.1% and down 3.4% from last year. Maple Ridge, you are down 0.5% from last month and down 6.4% from this time last year. And finally, Pitt Meadows, you're actually up 1.8% from last month and down only 2.6% from last year. Pitt Meadow is not looking so bad right now. We did see a little bit of a slowdown in the price decreases through May and June, specifically for detached homes, but honestly, that seems like it was just a little bit of a blip in the data. The continued decrease in prices seems to be pretty consistent. It's not dramatic. We're not talking about 5-10% every month, but the, 0.5 to 1.5% decrease every month is still happening, and it is kind of happening across the board. So not that you should be in a rush to do so, but if you are planning a move, you should probably start thinking about it and planning pretty seriously right now, because if you are in a position where you do want to sell, you're losing money every month that you're sitting on your home. Now, of course, that works in your favor if you are upsizing, but if you're downsizing, well, not so much, unfortunately. But anyway, jumping into townhomes now, once again starting off in Burnaby. You are down 2.3% from last month and down 8.3% from last year. New West, you're down 0.2% from last month and down 4.5% from last year. Coquitlam, you're down 2.5% from last month and down 8.6% from last year. Port Moody, you are down 1% from last month and down 3% from last year. Port Coquitlam, you are down 2.8% from last month and down 9.5% from last year. Maple Ridge, you are down 1.4% from last month and down 7.9% from last year. And finally, Pitt Meadows, down 0.3% from last month and down 6.5% from last year. Now, despite the fact that the market has been pretty bad, so to speak, there are two kinds of people that are really winning in this sort of environment. The first kind is kind of obvious. It's first-time home buyers. If you're somebody who is a first-time home buyer, this is the perfect market for you because, first of all, there's no rush. You're not competing with other people, and there's still a fair bit of inventory to choose from, not to mention the fact that affordability has gotten much, much better. How much more better will it get? Well, who knows? We don't know where the bottom is. We don't know when it'll happen. So the important part is just to get yourself prepared. Make sure you find a place that you like and make sure you're buying at a comfortable level. And the other person that's really winning here is anybody who is moving up. So somebody who's maybe in a condo right now and moving up to a townhouse, or they're in a townhouse and moving up to a detached house. If you're bridging that gap right now to that bigger home, the gap in dollars is smaller the more prices go down. So if you're in that kind of a situation, now is probably the time to start thinking about making that move. But again, you need to make sure that you have stable finances and that you're buying within your means. Don't, if you're pre-approved up to 1.2 million, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to go and spend all of that money. You might consider buying something a little bit less as long as it fits what you're looking for. Anyway, jumping into condos now, again, starting off in Burnaby, you are down 0.2% from last month and down 7.1% from last year. New West, you're down 0.7% from last month and down 8.3% from last year. Coquitlam, you're down 0.4% from last month and down 7.2% from last year. Port Moody, you are down 1.4% from last month and down 5.8% from last year. Port Coquitlam, you are down 2% from last month and down 7.7% from last year. Maple Ridge, you are up 0.5% from last month, but still down 6.7% from last year. And finally, Pitt Meadows, you are up 0.5% from last month and down 6.4% from last year. All right, and jumping into how long homes are taking to sell, or in other words, days on market. Burnaby, you are sitting at 27 days on market. New West, you're at 28. Coquitlam, you're at 20. Port Moody, you are at 23. Port Coquitlam, you are at 25. Maple Ridge, you are at 21. And Pitt Meadows, you are at 20. Nothing really groundbreaking with those numbers. They've bounced up and down sort of around the 3 to 4 week mark, basically across the board. At least not in the Fraser Valley anyway. North of the Fraser, everybody's pretty well sitting around that time frame. South of the Fraser, Surrey in particular, it's much worse. Now, if you do happen to be thinking about making a move in this kind of a market, there is a link down in the description below. You can book a time to chat with us. We'll talk you through your situation and give you some good actionable next steps that you could take without the sales pitch, of course. Anyway, I'm Angelo with the Atlas Group, and that is enough real estate for today. See you in the next video.